houses, rooms, power tools, books, boats, guns, toilets. You can share almost everything today. Sharing economy is huge and it's getting bigger and bigger. But why do people share? Please welcome Steven Leguillon, founder and CEO at Belle, Assiette, and Piotr, General Manager for CE at BlaBlaCar.
Hi, Mia.
Hi, guys.
Hi, all.
So, you heard my question. Why do people share? Why would I share my car with you, Piotr?
Well, it's a tough question, especially in the morning. But maybe I'll start with a story of sharing. Actually, people share for years, actually, and it's not really something new. What we try to do with different ventures like Belle, Assiette, and BlaBlaCar and others is trying to make it more reliable, easier, and just adopt it to current way how people interact. People change their interaction over years, and that's what affects how people change the way they share.
Yeah, I guess for us it's a bit of a different reason why people share. I think we're seeing an emergence of an entire new layer of companies where consumers are sharing not to maybe optimize their resources, but to get access to new resources they couldn't afford before. So I guess we'll be talking a little bit about La Belle Assiette after, but we're enabling people to get access to a luxury service that is a private chef, which would have been not affordable if they weren't sharing before, and which they are able to afford now because they're sharing it with multiple people.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about a bit more about your project. So, for those that don't know, maybe, what is BlaBlaCar? What is ride-sharing service? Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, sure. So BlaBlaCar is a platform that connects drivers with empty seats with passengers that travel same way. And the simplest way how we could imagine what we do is just if you imagine all the empty cars that travel around countries, let's say Ukraine, let's say Russia, let's say Poland, or any other country, you would see that there is a massive amount of seats that are just unused, so resources that are unused. And what we are doing in BlaBlaCar is through additional layers of trust, we make this, we help people connect, travel in a reliable, trustworthy, and safe way together.
Okay. And Steven, La Belle Assiette, what does it mean?
Yeah, well,
what do you do?
So La Belle Assiette means the beautiful plates, but it's a French company. I guess we're a little less known than BlaBlaCar, almost, but it's arriving.
Yet.
Exactly. So we're trying to create a new category in the food and the dining industry, and it's based on two very simple principles. There's a supply that's created by a marketplace of chefs, of cooks, who are all professional. And they come to your home and they bring all the ingredients, they set up in your kitchen and they cook a meal for you and they look after the service and they clean up before they go. And the company is based in Paris.
They clean up before they go.
They clean up before they go.
Great.
That's the important part. So we're based in Paris, but we're open in France, Belgium, Luxembourg, Switzerland, and we have and in the UK as well, and we have a small office in the UK. Okay,
so you mentioned several countries. How did the expansion go? What do you do before you enter a new market?
So the company's 2 years old, but we've been having a commercial product for about a year. So we're expanding, I guess, internationally very early, but it's always kind of been in the company's DNA. I think it's, especially in Europe, it's one of the things which you should consider from the start because each of our local markets is pretty much too small to build a big company. The way we kind of go at it is, I think it's probably a bit different than ride sharing. The most important thing for us is to analyze, is there liquidity we can create in this local market? So for us that means, are there enough chefs? Because in some countries it's going to be easier than in others. And once we determine that, we kind of go in, let's say, a bit cowboy style. We go very fast. We try to find a local person very quickly and get things off the ground and kind of then organize, let's say, more of the admin and office and that sort of thing. We just try to go as quick as possible. So right now we're opening a country every 2 months, pretty much.
So I'm assuming you are eating a lot because you need to test all those chefs.
Yeah. So all the chefs are professional, and it's highly curated. It's not just like an open marketplace where anybody can come. So we do organize test dinners, and it was me and my co-founder when we started the company. For the first like 6 months, we ate amazingly well, and after a while, it got just too many chefs in too many countries. So we started crowdsourcing the testing. We're not in Ukraine yet, but if we were, you guys would probably be able to go to test dinners in Kiev and check is the chef good or not.
Okay. And Piotr, what about BlaBlaCar? How do you enter the new market? What do you do before that?
We share the same way of expanding. We started a bit earlier. BlaBlaCar has a story of like 7 years. And we also started to think about expansion quite early in the process because of the same reasons that Stefan mentioned. Actually, even if you consider France, it's a country where you could probably easily grow to a reasonable size and a service that is working and is profitable. But then you may end up only in one country, and you'll see same services being launched and mushrooming around surrounding countries. So we decided to launch quite early, and we started with Spain and the UK, Italy, Poland, and Russia, Ukraine, Germany. So right now we are in 13 countries, including Turkey, which was launched quite recently. What we do is, the way how we think of launching new countries also changed over time. We started with an approach which was much more similar to what you told. Maybe not a cowboy style, but we haven't really analyzed a lot before launching countries. When I spoke with funders, when I met them, we had a story that we choose just square big countries and we launch them. Now we try to analyze a bit of indicators that allow us to decide to launch. In our case, it's road network, it's alternative means of transportation to what we do, so buses, trains. We also analyze how people behave online, so what's the internet penetration, what's social networks penetration, because we are in a way social network. And summing all this up, also legal framework at a certain point it becomes important. And if we sum it up, then we decide to launch or not to launch. But we still try to focus on big countries.
So Steven mentioned local teams. You were actually a local team in Poland. How did that story go?
So yeah, I haven't mentioned that, but at the end, one of the most important factors before deciding to launch a country is if we have a good team on ground. We rely heavily on local teams. Without a local team, probably wouldn't be possible to launch Russia and Ukraine with the pace of growth we have right now. So that's very important thing. We try to find local teams that do similar activity that BlaBlaCar does. That's the ideal situation. That doesn't happen in all cases. So that's one of the models we use. It's kind of acquisition. We hire. We sometimes obviously have kind of spin-offs from headquarters. Our company is very multinational. We have people from various countries working in headquarters, and sometimes they decide just to move either temporarily or permanently to some countries to run operations there. We obviously have a model of hiring and recruiting people in a country, which also happens. But probably the best solution is to find a local team. If we find a local team that does something like we do, we try to speak with them and team up and work together. And that happened in Poland. For me, that happened in Ukraine, where we acquired a Ukrainian company that was called Podorożniki. They operated in Russia and Ukraine. And it happened in Italy too. So, I think that the countries where we work with that kind of companies are really successful and provide us with tremendous growth.
Okay. Steven, do you have something to add about local teams? How do you find the right person?
Yeah, well, that was actually a big mistake we did in the first country we were launching. there's probably a misconception that in all these marketplace types of businesses, if you design a good site and if you have good code, people will come and stuff will work around the world. I thought that a little bit, and in the first country we were expanding to, which was Belgium, we didn't set up a local team there, and it was very slow to start off. So now we kind of adapted and we agreed that we need local teams, very smart people locally to execute a well-defined plan. But that also causes a few challenges, because if you're going to have local teams, local marketing, local people, you also need the cash to go with it. So that's always the kind of chicken and egg problem.
Well, okay, before you go to the new markets, before you even start the new business, you need to decide on something that is called business model. How do you decide on that? What is the right business model for one sharing economy startup? What was the right business model for you too?
So, my answer is we still don't know what's the good business model. We still look for it and test different ones. But let's say that in our case, in BlaBlaCar, we, at least for some countries, found a business model that works, which is probably working for a lot of marketplaces, which bases on a small commission that we take from transactions that happen online. But it's hard to say if it's the final model that will apply to all the markets. We still experiment. And most importantly, we've worked for quite a while without a final business model, which is commission. We tried different methods. We had some B2B platforms where companies paid us. We had some premium services where users paid for highlighting their offers in our platform. So we went through some models, and it's important for me to start as early as possible with experimenting, but probably it largely depends on your capital structure, what you could do, and how long you can experiment. And it also applies to the way how you launch new countries. So in certain cases, you can allow yourself to run a country through a longer period of time to grow the community in this country, and then you can try to adopt your current business model or apply a working one or come up with something new.
Steven?
Yeah, well, if you take money out of the marketplace, it's going to create some friction. So it's always going to be harder if you charge. But the problem, I think, especially in Europe, is access to capital is always a little more complicated, and investors are always going to be looking very closely, even from the early stages in your company, at your unit economics. How much are you buying a customer for? How much is he going to bring you over 18 months, etc. So if you don't come and meet the investors with already a business model to show that something's already working and bringing you some money, it's going to be tough to get your first couple of rounds of financing. So for example, with our experiences, we had from day one, we were obliged to start charging on the marketplace. It worked through a commission like most marketplaces. But now that we are a bit more funded, in new countries, we're going, let's say, a bit more aggressively, where we're removing all of that friction of taking a cut out of the marketplace so that we can go a little faster. But you just need to be able to have access to the capital. So it's, as he mentioned, it's always very clever to start challenging your business from the start to try to find a business model, because you may just be, let's say, wasting time on a marketplace or sharing economy or convenience economy business where it's impossible to retrieve any significant amounts of money.
Yeah, so at BlaBlaCar we spent some time with relatively small capital, and once we found the model that works in France and is expanded to other countries right now, we're able to raise more capital. So it was, as you said, mostly convincing investors that we found something that could work in most of the countries on the world.
Okay. So let's talk about branding, your names. So Belle, Assiette is very French, and BlaBlaCar is very interesting. How do you choose a name that works locally and that could work globally if you expand?
Yeah, well, our service is, our company is really a service business, and creating an awesome brand around it was critical for us to be able to build a long-term business where the consumer is really going to trust us and associate La Belle Assiette with quality, and trust all the different products we're going to be rolling out over the next couple of years. So choosing the name, obviously, using a French name because we're in cuisine with chefs, etc., was pretty logical. It does represent a huge challenge. You managed to say La Belle Assiette.
After a few times.
After a couple of times. But what we're seeing is people in different countries where they don't necessarily speak French are kind of making the brand their own. And what we're seeing are customers saying, I booked La Belle, or I booked LBA. So we'll just see how things go. It's not for sure that we'll be able to keep this brand everywhere, but it is important for us to be able to create all the values around the French cuisine and French standards, even when we go internationally.
Yeah.
So in our case, we started with a French name. It's called Covoiturage. Correct me if I spell it wrong.
No, that's good.
I'm getting better. And we realized that probably it's a very good brand for France, because people understand what does it mean. This means ride sharing in French, and it's very easy to apply some marketing strategies like SEO. People can easily find your service. But when you think of expanding globally, this doesn't make sense to expand with the at least a French name that means ride sharing. But in general, like if you sell cars, you don't name your car. You just have some brand. So it was a challenge to find a globally working brand, and a lot of people asked the founders and me also, were you guys drunk when you introduced this name? And the reality is that it's deeply linked with the product. So in BlaBlaCar, once you define a profile, you upload a photo, you describe yourself by some kind of bio. You put some indicators if you like to travel with cats, dogs, whatever. And you also determine how talkative you are. And this is determined by blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah indicator, which for blah means that you are probably not really talkative. And for blah, 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 you can say a story of your life in 1 hour or longer if the journey takes longer. So that's how the brand was created. And it's easy recognizable in most of the countries on the world. It's easily spelled, and quite quickly it becomes top of mind in the country where we operate. So the phrase blah blah even becomes a very popular phrase in terms of what people search in internet.
So are you a blah or a blah blah?
Well, I choose blah blah because sometimes I'm really happy to discuss, and sometimes it's not the moment. So that's the safe approach, I would say.
And you, Steven, blah blah blah.
I think probably more blah blah blah.
Blah blah blah. Okay, so sharing economy is built on trust. So users need to trust each other. People need to trust your chefs. So how do you achieve that trust? What do you do? What are the tools or tricks?
Yeah, well, for us, it isn't really a case of user base or number of reviews or anything. We do it from the start. So our real opportunity is that we're able to create a service using freelance people who work under our brand, who are able to provide a service that is even better than professional caterers would do, or that even restaurants can do. So the key isn't linking to the number of users and deciding are they good or bad. The key is for us up front to do the curation. So to give you a couple of stats, about 30% of the staff of the employees in La Belle Assiette only work on quality and curation of the chefs. So it's going to be curation up front of who is able to access or not. It's going to be organizing validation dinners. It's going to be following up with all the clients of how is everything going, and even tracking the chefs throughout the entire day to see where are they, what kind of ingredients are they buying, etc. It goes on and on. So for us, trust is trust in the brand. It's not trust in reviews or anything. Consumers can just come to La Belle Assiette and book a chef for tomorrow night, and they are 100% sure it's going to be a good experience.
And blah blah?
So in our case, it's a combination of number of factors. First of them is we've built a product that enables people to plan their trips in advance. So you declare that you travel in a certain direction. You fill up your profile, as I said, photo, bio, which makes you much more trustworthy. Declaring your trip makes it more reliable. Plus, if you have kind of a booking system, there is a commitment appearing before a trip, so people pay for a trip in advance, and then it makes the trip much more likely to happen. So we create this within the product. Then we have self-controlling community, actually. So people rate each other after each trip. They rate the experience of traveling with someone else for a few hours, which is not just a rating of a transaction. It's a rating of a whole experience. And once you're a passenger, you can also rate a driver and his driving skills, which can alarm or not future passengers if this driver is a trustworthy person. And the last thing that I think is very important is that we moderate all the content. So everything what appears on our website goes through our moderation team. That enables us to proactively block or act if something wrong may happen. So that's a combination of pillars of trust that enabled us to build a trustworthy service. And if I refer to some kind of results of a survey we did on our community, it appears that the person with BlaBlaCar profile, with photo, with ratings, is almost as trustworthy as a family member, and it's more trustworthy than colleagues from work. So it's tremendous that if you just go on a website, you trust a person that you've never met, almost like your family member.
That's
and it works.
So our audience is sleeping still, so we need to spice things up a bit. I'm going to stand for this part. Last summer I went to Le Web London, and it was all about sharing economy. Every panel, every discussion was all about this topic, but there was one keynote named 10 Reasons Sharing Economy is Bollocks, and a hipster cult. So I'm going to name some of those reasons, not all 10 of them, and I'm going to ask you guys to make a comment. So the first reason is that sharing economy has nothing to do with sharing. Airbnb is not a sharing business, it's a renting business. Piotr, why is BlaBlaCar a ride-sharing platform? Why isn't it called Rent a Seat in My Car platform?
So I think that the main reason why we feel that our community is sharing something is that we don't offer on-demand service. So it's in demand. People travel anyway, and they can have empty seats in their car anyway, and it helps others who travel the same way to join them on this journey. That's one thing. Another thing is that we designed our platform and product to block users from earning. Actually, you cannot earn in BlaBlaCar. You can only save. That's the most important thing. So that doesn't encourage people to invest in some goods just to offer services. We are not a service platform. We are just a sharing platform. We share seats.
Okay, so you share. You do not rent. The second reason was that sharing economy is dangerous. You don't know the person you let in your home, in your car, at your table. Steven, how can we trust your chefs?
No, I would have to say I agree with a certain person who said a lot of developments that have been put around the sharing economy are bollocks. I think the first companies in the sharing economy were pioneers. Probably when they started Airbnb, they didn't realize how far it could go and how much of a hotel service they could eventually build. And I would probably say that BlaBlaCar is one of the few remaining legitimate sharing economy businesses. But there's been, I think, a significant change. These sharing economy businesses have become what I think is called convenience economy businesses, where you're sharing, as I said earlier, you're just sharing resources not because you just want to make sure it's better for the world or that you're saving money. You're sharing resources because it's giving you access to a level of service you never had before.
Like chefs.
like chefs, like a private chauffeur with Uber, and that the only factor that is similar throughout all these businesses is that the supply, so who's actually doing the job behind, is based on a marketplace. It's freelance people. So even if I guess the argument that you were asking me is how can I trust these people, I think that's kind of disappeared in our new types of businesses, because it's the company's responsibility and it's the company's brand that's being put out there. When you book a car on Uber, you're not booking a driver, whatever his name is, you're booking Uber.
Yes.
And when you book a chef on La Belle Assiette, you're not booking Chef Brian Defer, you're booking La Belle Assiette. So it's not linked really to this trust anymore. It's linked to how much do you trust a brand. And if we send a bad chef and give you a stomach ache and that you're sick, we will be the ones who lose out of all this, because you're going to be around a table with 8 people who are going to hate the experience, and they're going to talk a lot more about how much they hated the experience than how much they enjoyed the first experience.
Yeah. So the next reason was it's only for rich people. If you can afford a room at Airbnb, you can afford a room at a pretty good hotel. Steven, again, is that true? How expensive are your chefs?
Well, we're not cheap. That's for sure. So on average, our average basket is 40 euros per person. So, but it goes obviously much higher than that. We have people who pay a couple of €100 per person for fantastic gourmet experiences. But what I would like to kind of underline is when you're booking a chef now, you're no longer booking a private chef. Before, this chef only worked for one family. It was a one-to-one model. Now this chef is looking not after one family, but probably 20, 30, 40, 50 families in his local area, only when they have a need. And what does that imply? It means that things have become a lot cheaper. Having a private chef before implied basically employing a private chef, so it was a very elitist thing to do. And now you're sharing the cost of having this private chef whenever you need it. And so what we're seeing is the more business we bring to these chefs, the more they can lower their prices. So as our marketplace dynamic is growing, the more business we bring to individual chefs, the more they're actually lowering their prices. And we see that from giving 1 or 2 bookings a week to a chef to bringing 5 bookings a week, prices are divided by 45%.
Well, that's true. So this is the question for Piotr, who is not a social media fan. But sharing is out of control. Social networks do not respect our online space, our data. Stuff we think we own aren't ours at all. We share everything, and we have less and less control over our digital possessions. And when we share everything, why would we share our personal space, like the space in my car? Why would I share that?
Well, I think that that what you said is I can agree with. Privacy is something that people probably value more and more. It was a process of sharing everything online, and it will probably disappear at a certain point, and people will stop sharing everything. But in terms of why people share a space in a car, I think that there are a number of things that encourage them to do so, and just this trustworthy service makes them more aware of with whom they can travel. So you can check with whom you will travel in a car before that travel happens. You can know the driver, you can know the passengers, and most importantly, you can just decide with whom you travel because you have various options on the website. And no one is actually forced to take passengers. So if you're a driver, you can decide, I don't want to go with these guys. So you're not sharing the space to everyone, you're just deciding about what you do. And you don't need to do it to make your living, that's most important. So if you want to travel alone, you'll do it.
Okay, so we are entering the last minute. I'm going to need a very short one-sentence comment for the last reason. So the last reason is you can't share everything. Where is the line? What shouldn't we share? Some of the best things in our lives can't be shared, memories, children, even though there is a platform that allows dog sharing. So what wouldn't you two share? One sentence.
Well, I agree that sharing your children may be a little weird. but some things just really make sense. I can't remember exactly what the stat is, but I think in the US, it's close to like 1 in 6. There's the equivalent of a power drill to make holes in walls for 1 in 6 people in the US, and it's the kind of thing you use like once a year. So that really makes sense, and BlaBlaCar really makes sense. There's so many spare seats, and it doesn't make sense for buses to do long distances where there are cars doing the same. And it makes sense to share a chef with some other families rather than having a full-time chef, of course. I guess the only thing I probably wouldn't share is if I have a chef over and he cooks a beautiful plate, a beautiful dish for me, probably wouldn't share that dish with the person beside me.
You, Piotr, very short, what wouldn't you share?
Well, I think that a lot of personal stuff that we have, we definitely don't want to share personal experiences, and I find it hard.
So that's it, sharing economy panel is over, but feel free to share your thoughts on social media using hashtag IDCEE 2014. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Mia.